Welcome in Karibuni to Aroma of Zanzibar. Today I bring you something very simple yet very, very delicious. And this is Streusel cake, which is also known as coffee cake. Now, the most important part of this coffee cake is the crumb. So I'm just going to start making that first. I've got about a quarter cup of butter, which is about 60 grams, half a cup of brown sugar, which is about 100 grams, half a cup of all-purpose flour, which is about 60 grams, and a teaspoon of cinnamon powder and 1/8 teaspoon of salt. We're just going to mix this well and combine and then leave it aside. You can also use melted butter if you want, but please make sure that it is not hot. And if you do decide to use any kind of nuts, please make sure that you roast them or toast them ahead of time so that way they are cooled before you add them into your batter. Now for this recipe today, I'm using pecans. You don't have to use any if you don't want to. And I've also decided to share with you how I make simple buttermilk at home. There is a technical process which is quite a bit long, so I'm just going to go on this route where I use 1 cup of whole milk and 1 tablespoon of distilled vinegar. You can also add lemon or lime and let it set aside for about 5 to 7 minutes. Now, if you happen to have yogurt at home, plain or vanilla, for cakes, most of the time I like to use the vanilla because, it's flavored and I'm using for cakes after all, so it's okay. And I use about 2 tablespoons and add water to whatever consistency that I'm looking for, whether it's thick or thin. So now my buttermilk is ready. And I'm taking you to the next ingredients, which is going to be the flour, the sugar. I have some butter here, some eggs. Please make sure they're all in room temperature, some salt, vanilla extract, baking powder, baking soda, and of course the buttermilk. So I'm going to start with the dry ingredients. I've got 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. That's 281 grams. And I have a teaspoon of baking powder and half a teaspoon of baking soda and 1/8 teaspoon of salt. So we're just going to mix that and keep it aside. And then we've got the butter here in room temperature. That's about half a cup, which is 113 grams, and 1 cup, which is about 200 grams of granulated sugar. And you're just going to mix it well for a couple of minutes. And then we're going to add the egg, 1 egg at a time. So once the yellow has disappeared, then I add my next egg. We only use 2 eggs for this recipe. And then we add the vanilla, which is 1 tablespoon. And then I'm going to use the alternative method today, which is the flour and the liquid, which is buttermilk. So we're going to start with the flour. The flour is in 3 portions. So we start with the flour and we end up with the flour. And then we add the buttermilk. And then we add the flour again. And the buttermilk again. Please make sure that you're mixing on medium or number 1 or stir. Number 1 would do. All right. And then we're going to finish it. We just finished it with the flour. And I usually don't like to overmix my batter. So I just use a spatula here. And we're just going to mix it to make sure there are no lumps. Then the next step here is I've got my granulated sugar, which is about 1 tablespoon, and 1 tablespoon of cinnamon powder. And I am using 9x9 inch pan. You can use 10, you can use 8. If you use 8, please, you may need to bake it a little bit longer. And you can also use the loaf pan. That also goes very well for this cake. And we're just going to spread the batter. And I'm using only half of the batter with a little bit extra. I like my lower part of the cake to be higher than the upper part, but you can do it half and half if you want. Okay, this cake is known as coffee cake, although many people get confused because, when you say coffee, they think that it has coffee as an ingredient. This cake is known as coffee cake because it goes very well with coffee. So you can, like you have tea cakes, we also have coffee cakes. And now I'm just going to spread the sugar mixture, the sugar and cinnamon mixture. I just use half of it. Make sure that you cover all the batter. And then I'm adding my nuts, my pecans. You can use anything you want, and you don't have to use any if you don't like or you don't want, it's okay. And then we're going to finish it up with the rest of the sugar. And please make sure that your oven is ready. Mine is at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 177 Celsius. And then we're just going to finish up with the layer, with the batter. This is a very thick batter, but it gives a really, really nice, very light and moist cake. And I think that's why it's called a coffee cake, because, it's very light and it's really, really, what do I say, very, really, really, not addictive, but it's nice. I mean, it's very easy to finish this cake in a day. Okay, so this cake, the streusel cakes usually are done, baked or cooked in fall, but I'm sure you can have them any time of the year. Maybe because of the smell, the aromas, the flavors of the cinnamon, but you can have apple streusel, you can do almond streusel. So now we're going to do the streusel, which is the crumb. So I'm just going to put that at the top. And we're going to bake this for about 40 to 45 minutes, depending on the heat, of your oven. So here's my cake. It's nice and golden brown, and I'm just going to release it. You can also slice it from the pan. You don't need to release it if you don't want to. Just put it in the plate. I should have had another plate, and sometimes I tend to forget to remove the parchment paper. And if you don't have a parchment paper, you don't have to use one. You can just dust your pan with flour and grease. That should be all right. And I'm ready to slice this cake. You see the top is very, very nice and crunchy. And this is what makes this cake different or special than the other cakes. And I cannot believe that I'm usually so impatient when I have to slice a cake and see how it is, no matter how many times I've done it. All right, so here's our slice. Oh God, Fatia, how could you do this? All right, so I can't wait to show you the slice and see how nice it is and how moist it is. So thank you so much for your time and your patience and your love and your support. For more recipes, please visit me at Aroma of Zanzibar. Check out that crumb. How beautiful it is.